Fort Collins has been known to be a top place to live in northern Colorado. And I have to admit, it is a great place to be. You know, for me, I go up there constantly for work, to show homes, to go out and eat, to go out and play, to go out to the hiking mountains or hiking trails that are out there. And so for me, Fort Collins is definitely a place that people should be looking at when moving here to northern Colorado. Hands down, 100%. But at the same time, there are a lot of other great places around Fort Collins, Colorado that most people don't tend to look at, because when you look on a map, you know, all these places look like they're super far away from Fort Collins. The biggest example I have for you would be in terms of Loveland, Colorado to Fort Collins, Colorado. When you look on a map, it looks like it could be such a long drive. But when you actually come out here and get to visit northern Colorado and you get to drive through some of the towns, you really get to see the difference between, you know, how close everything is. You know, Loveland, Colorado to Fort Collins, Colorado, to get to like middle of Fort Collins to middle of Loveland, you're looking at a 20-minute drive. Pretty simple, pretty easy drive. Most of the roads going in between are between 55 miles an hour, and taking I-25 can sometimes be quicker and allows you to go 65 to 75 miles an hour. So from Loveland to Fort Collins, super quick. You know, another couple great towns around Fort Collins are going to be Johnstown, Colorado. You have Timnath, Colorado. You have Windsor, Colorado. You have Greeley, Colorado. And you have Wellington, Colorado. You have Severance, Colorado. And all these places are very close to Fort Collins and are an easy commute to go to when you want to, you know, specifically maybe have space, or you want to have a bigger house, or your price point isn't really looking as good in Fort Collins as some of these other areas. You know, you could really find yourself potentially looking at some other great spots that I mentioned above that would be a great place to take a look at if Fort Collins is a place you want to be surrounded by because you love the environment, but you might be looking for something just a little different. So I just wanted today to go through some of the pros and cons of some of the different areas I mentioned, and just give you guys a perspective on, you know, what are some of the areas you could potentially live in while still getting to enjoy Fort Collins, Colorado. So my number one, and it will always probably be my number one, will be Loveland, Colorado. I love Loveland, Colorado, and you can go watch plenty of my other videos that state how much I enjoy Loveland. You know, the two biggest benefits I see from living in Loveland, if you are thinking of wanting to be a part of Fort Collins or going to like Colorado State University or have a job up there, is the fact that you can get a little bit more of an affordable house. You're still close to the foothills, so you're close to hiking, you're close to going up to Estes Park. I mean, there's just so much of a benefit in terms of travel-wise. You know, the main thing I've always said is it is the focal point, center point of northern Colorado for commuters. You know, if you need to go to Denver, it is way easier to get to Denver from Loveland than it is from Fort Collins. You could be adding an extra 20 minutes onto that drive every day coming home, and depending on traffic, it could even be more than that. And so for me and stuff, you know, there's a huge benefit to being in Loveland for the commuter, or for someone that just wants to be a little bit closer to Denver or to, you know, Estes Park versus Fort Collins. You know, with the cheaper homes and stuff, you know, you can get from at least this market that we're in now, which is just a crazy market. You know, Fort Collins and Loveland are relatively similar in terms of price point, but in terms of like updates on homes or square footage, you definitely are going to get a little bit more of that in Loveland than you will in Fort Collins, and you'll have potentially more options as well, to where you're not having to, you know, maybe bid against 11 to 15 contracts, you know, in Loveland, at least for 2022, and it is kind of slowing down just a little bit. But what you can do and stuff is you can get a little bit better of a home and only, you know, have to maybe offer against maybe one or two offers, or sometimes no other offers, depending on what house you end up choosing. And so between those two things, I would definitely say Loveland is a great option to take a look at, and the community is just as fun as Fort Collins is. It's a little more slow paced, and you're just so close to Fort Collins, and it has great schools. The sporting is pretty decent there for high schools and things like that. And so if you're thinking about Fort Collins, but you might want to be pretty close to the foothills for hiking and having some of the best hiking trails around, you know, even compared to Fort Collins, you know, Loveland would be a good option. You know, another good option that I tend to show my clients, you know, around Colorado is going to be kind of Timnath, Colorado, and Windsor, Colorado. Those are both just directly behind Fort Collins, just to the east. Timnath is just a hop and a skip across I-25, and you're in Timnath. Some of the biggest benefits of living in Timnath would be you're going to get newer homes out there. It's going to be a little bit more, in my opinion, family oriented. You know, they tend to have metro districts there that have larger parks. They tend to have pools. And you know, when you drive around there's just a lot of kids in those neighborhoods, and so to me that's one of the big benefits of, you know, Timnath to me. You know, there are plenty of other individuals, younger couples, older couples there as well, and there's some different neighborhoods you can go into to get, you know, different options and stuff. But an overall feel, you know, Timnath is just a suburb of Fort Collins. You know, it's still developing and building up. But in the next 10 years or so, I'm just going to be so excited to see where Timnath goes, because the infrastructure they're putting in out there and some of the neighborhoods they're putting out there are just some of the funnest to drive through and be a part of. One of the negatives I would say for Timnath, and I forgot to do this for Loveland as well, so I'll just add this in really quick, is, you know, for Timnath, I would say driving across Harmony Road on I-25 is a big challenge, you know, especially during the rush hour times. My main job is to avoid Harmony at all costs when I drive, and living in Timnath, your options are a little more scarce unless you drive east and take some of the back roads around to some of the side roads that drop you into Fort Collins. And even though those sometimes can be busy, so just in terms of Timnath, just something to think about in terms of if you don't want to deal with traffic as much, maybe Loveland would be a better option, or Windsor would be a better option than Timnath would be. For Loveland, one of the biggest negatives I would say in Loveland is, you know, it's a little bit older of a community, which makes it really nice and quiet. You know, some neighborhoods you'll find obviously there's younger generations, but the overall feel of Loveland is a little bit older. It's a little more mature audience because we don't have the college right in our town in Loveland, so not many college students really go to Loveland for school and stuff because of the commute. They'd rather be, you know, a walk away from the college and stuff. So, you know, Fort Collins, in terms of that, you know, that's one of the negatives Fort Collins has, in my opinion, if you're looking to have a little bit more of a mature landscape on that side, you know, in terms of people who are around you and who you surround yourself by. Another big thing that I would say Timnath has is that, you know, it's just all newer. You know, everything in there is just very well done. The neighborhoods are very well kept, and I know that's going to be the next area for growth, especially for Fort Collins, where that's going to be the next big spot for most people to move. Other than that, you know, going over just to the east of Timnath is Windsor. Another, again, hop and skip away. It's hard to tell if you're in Timnath or Windsor half the time. But Windsor's a little bit more developed, in my opinion, than Timnath is, in terms of having restaurants and gas stations. You know, like I was saying, you know, Timnath feels a little more like a suburb. They do have a small downtown, but Windsor just has a little bit more of a bigger town feel to it. And it's because it is a little bit bigger, you know, I know Timnath is really catching up pretty quick on it, so I don't know how long I'll be able to say that for. But it is something that people tend to go there for, is because it's just a little bit more of a, you know, a little bit more of a community feel versus the suburb feel. So my biggest thing on Windsor and stuff is that it's another great place to be a commuter. You know, you're really close to, if you have to work up in Greeley or down south, anywhere, it's a nice easy commute. There's a lot more back roads back in Windsor that can get you around places a lot quicker and faster than taking some of the main roads that like Loveland or Fort Collins are a part of. Another big part of Windsor that I like are the neighborhoods. They have some really fun neighborhoods out there, really unique houses. It's not cookie cutter as much out in Windsor. And they're starting to put a lot more amenities out there in terms of outdoor recreation. They have a nice little lake that you can go out to and be able to go out and hang around on a beach. And, you know, they're starting to put a lot more hiking and reservations or reserves and stuff in Windsor and stuff too, so that you can go around and actually have hiking trails a little closer than having to drive all the way down to Fort Collins or, you know, Loveland, Estes area. And so those are kind of my biggest things about Windsor. You know, another, you know, in terms of negatives on Windsor, Colorado, you know, the biggest thing I would say is going to be traffic again. You know, the one sad part about Windsor is the infrastructure of the roads are a little messed up and stuff, and so there's a lot of just 2-lane roads still out there. And so during those rush hour times, it'll kind of feel almost like Timnath, Colorado, where, you know, it just feels like you're going to be sitting in traffic for a long time. There'll be long car waits, and because they are doing so many updates and putting in new neighborhoods, construction is rampant out there, and so you'll have big trucks going in and out all the time. And, you know, it's just it doesn't feel the same as like Fort Collins and Loveland, where they're pretty established. They don't have much room to grow anymore. And so in terms of that, you know, Fort Collins and Loveland, the main thing that you deal with is just them repairing the older roads. And so that's the only time you really feel traffic issues really in Loveland, unless you're driving on Highway 34 that takes you up to Estes, Colorado. Then that's where you really feel the traffic in Loveland. You know, in terms of, we'll go a little bit further back east, Severance, Colorado is actually a place that's really growing on me. You know, it's actually a really great place to be, I think, if you want to be in Fort Collins, but you don't want to have a bunch of traffic issues as much as you would like in Timnath, Colorado. Severance is literally just right outside east of Timnath. And the one thing that I like about that is because there are a lot more back roads that you can go on in Severance to get around to Loveland or over to the south side, over to Berthoud or Longmont. Down north, there's plenty of side roads as well that can get you out to Wellington, doing all that as well. And so for me, Severance is a great place for a commuter. It allows you to get into Fort Collins a lot easier than Windsor. A lot of people from Windsor will actually drive out to Severance to go around to miss Harmony, unless they're going to the Costco or having to go somewhere off Harmony. And so, you know, another good thing about Severance is there are newer neighborhoods going in there. My biggest thing about Severance is they have some really nice acreage neighborhoods in there as well. So if you're looking for an acreage, you know, Severance is a great place to look at. So is Berthoud. We'll talk about Berthoud, Colorado later, but if you're kind of looking at the idea of doing acreages, Berthoud, Severance, Johnstown, some of those areas are great spots to be able to get a little more space and a little more square footage on your lots versus living in some of these towns that are pretty cramped up with homes and stuff. So just an idea to think about. So my next one would be Johnstown, and you know, this one for me is it's growing on me. You know, the drive out there, you know, for Fort Collins, if you're going to live out there, you know, Fort Collins probably isn't going to be as big of a concern going down there. You know, Loveland would probably be your more destination place, because to get from Johnstown to Fort Collins, you know, you're looking at a 30-35 minute drive to get to most places down there, unless you're just going to be staying on the south side of Fort Collins. But for me, you know, the big benefits there, lot cheaper homes for the square footage and for what you get out there. For 2022, less bidding wars out there as well. They're still happening, but even less than what you'd see in like Loveland, Timnath, and Windsor, and even Severance at this point. And for me, you know, that makes a big difference when looking. You're going to get a little more space, a little more backyards in Severance, Johnstown. And the one good thing I really like about Johnstown too is that it's a good sized town. It's got a nice little downtown with plenty of places to go eat locally. They have a YMCA out there, which is really awesome for anybody who wants to actually have a gym membership and not drive super far to it. They have plenty of little hiking trails and areas out there as well to be able to just go out and go for a quick walk around. They're putting in sidewalks and infrastructure as well out there to accommodate more bikers and cyclists and walkers. And so it's definitely becoming the next big area, probably outside of Loveland. You know, Loveland and Johnstown mixed together. Johnstown is just on the east side of Loveland. You know, if you're certain parts of Johnstown, you're only, you know, 5 minutes from Loveland or less. And so that to me is like another great spot. One of the negatives I would say of Johnstown would be probably the smell out there. So the closer and closer you get to Greeley, which is going to be the last place we talk about, you know, once you get to that area out east, you start getting a little bit more of a cow smell. Now, to me, it doesn't bother me. I've lived out on acreages and been around it enough to where it's not as big of an issue to me, and I don't smell it as much as others will, or I don't think it's as strong. But it's just something to be aware of, you know, because especially during like the springtime, like right now, if you go out there when it's wet and people are turning up manure in piles and things like that, you'll end up getting the smell from it. And then from Greeley as well, there's some different processing plants down there as well that can produce an odor that can drift that way sometimes as well. So that's the only thing I would say that would be a negative on the Johnstown side. Now, the last place, and this is the place that most people bash on here in northern Colorado. You know, for me, I kind of like it, but for what most people say is they think it's just a terrible place, but Greeley, Colorado. I absolutely love Greeley. I think Greeley is one of the places that, you know, you can get an actual affordable house that actually feels affordable, with plenty of amenities, food, shopping around it. It feels like a Fort Collins because it is a very large city. You know, it's larger than Loveland, Colorado is. They have some of the best Mexican food out there. If you're ever looking for a place to go and you're driving out east that way, checking out the original El Pueblito that they have there. They also have one in Fort Collins and Loveland as well, but that one is the original one. And for me, you know, another big thing I like about Greeley is that I just feel like it's set up pretty well. You know, once you go a little more east, it gets a little more chaotic in Greeley, but the west side of Greeley is a really nice place to be. It's got some really nice updated homes with good square footage, good sized lots. You know, a lot of the people out there are super friendly, super helpful. You know, I've never had a bad experience in Greeley. My girlfriend Lauren, she's actually from Greeley as well. She was born and raised, and you know, at this point in life, you know, I know she's a little sick of it and stuff, but for me, you know, even her, she still likes going back there. She still likes going to some of the restaurants that are out there. She still likes going back and seeing the downtown and, you know, getting to see how Greeley is maturing and growing at this point. And so for me, you know, that's, you know, when you talk to a broker out here, no matter who you talk to, if you listen to this video, you know, some people will steer you away from Greeley just due to the fact of what kind of a rep it has. The main thing that, you know, people say negative-wise about Greeley is that there's a little more crime over there and potential drug use and things like that. And so, you know, those can be things that can pop up. But for me and stuff, I think, you know, Greeley is you know, as safe as you can possibly get for, you know, living here in, you know, Colorado and stuff. You know, if you go out to Colorado Springs, you have crime in Fort Collins, you have crime in Loveland. No matter where you go, there's always going to be bad people. But, you know, my perspective is, you know, 95% of people are good and not 5% are bad. It's just unfortunate that the 5% just make such a big ruckus. And so that's just one of those things that, you know, for me, depending on what neighborhood you live in, they're going to be super nice. There's bad neighborhoods in Fort Collins just as there's bad neighborhoods in Greeley, and hopefully your realtor would let you know on those sides. If you're looking for a certain type of neighborhood, they'll let you know which ones to stay clear of. So, you know, just make sure you got someone out there that's going to be willing to share with you that kind of information. You know, every city has its good and bads. It all just depends on, you know, what are you truly looking for and what price range you really want your house to be at. And, you know, what do you truly enjoy when, you know, living in a city. So those are just some of my tips from the, you know, 6 or 7 different areas that are around Fort Collins. If you are looking to move to Fort Collins, I love working here. I've sold plenty of houses in Fort Collins, sold plenty of homes and helped people find places in Loveland, in Severance, in Wellington, in Greeley, and out in Platteville, Colorado. And so there are just so many options out there. So when you come out here, definitely ask your realtors or ask me, you know, questions in the comments and stuff, you know, what areas would work for you. You know, it might not all be Fort Collins, but it might be worth taking a half a day and doing a quick drive around to see if any of these other places might fit you. Well, I really appreciate you guys watching these videos. If you guys could please like, subscribe, and share, I would really appreciate it. I'm going to be trying to put videos out every Thursday for you, showing you different areas. You know, right now I went from Loveland, where I live. I'm heading over to Fort Collins to do a showing and stuff, and so hopefully every week I can get out and show you guys just little areas. Right now we're pretty close to CSU and stuff, and so we're just a block away off of Prospect. If we head just one more block to the north, we'll be pretty much in CSU territory and stuff. And so if you guys could just let me know what your thoughts are. If you guys are thinking about moving here, please let me know. I love being able to help people find homes out here and, you know, make it a true fun experience so that, you know, you get to come